What if I told you ancient civilizations were more advanced than we are in some ways? Before smartphones, before skyscrapers, they were aligning monuments with the stars, performing surgery, and inventing tools we still can't fully explain. This isn't mythology. These are real recorded facts, and they will absolutely change how you think about history. Take the Great Pyramid of Giza. Built over 4,500 years ago, it's aligned with true north with jaw-dropping precision, more accurate than any modern structure until GPS came along. The margin of error? Less than 1/10 of a degree. And the Egyptians did it without compasses, lasers, or computers. Just ropes, stars, and a terrifying understanding of geometry. But it wasn't just Egypt. In ancient China, doctors were performing skull surgeries around 2000 BC. Trepanation, removing parts of the skull to relieve pressure, sounds barbaric, but they actually knew what they were doing. Many patients survived. These early neurosurgeons used stone tools, herbal antiseptics, and techniques Europe wouldn't rediscover for thousands of years. Over in Mesopotamia, engineers were mixing early concrete to build massive ziggurats, stepped temples that still tower over the desert today. Their formulas lasted longer than many modern buildings. No steel, no trucks, just bricks, sweat, and architectural genius. They weren't building for comfort, they were building for gods, and they built to last. In ancient Persia, they engineered yakhchals, ice houses that could keep water frozen in the middle of blistering summers. Giant clay domes with underground chambers and wind vents. These structures passively cooled ice without electricity. It was 100 degrees outside, and they had working refrigerators. Designed centuries before modern science caught up. And those are just a few examples. These weren't flukes. They were part of a pattern. Cultures around the world solving problems we still struggle with, using only observation, creativity, and trial and error. From medicine to astronomy to civil engineering, ancient humans weren't behind us. In some ways, they were way ahead. Let's talk medicine, starting with ancient Egypt. Women used crocodile dung mixed with honey as birth control. It sounds ridiculous, but the acidity may have actually made it work. Elsewhere, Babylonian healers whispered spells over bowls of water and had patients drink it. It wasn't science as we know it, but it was their way of controlling life and death. In ancient Rome, hygiene came with a twist. Some elites cleaned their teeth using powdered mouse brains, believing it kept their breath fresh and spirit strong. Others wore amulets filled with crushed emeralds to ward off illness. Roman medicine blended ritual, trial and error, and sheer confidence. They didn't always get it right, but they never stopped experimenting. In China and India, medicine wasn't about fighting disease. It was about restoring balance. Chinese doctors traced invisible energy lines across the body. Indian healers believed in 3 life forces, or doshas, and treated imbalance with herbs, diet, and massage. These ancient systems still influence modern holistic medicine today, and they started thousands of years before microscopes existed. Now shift to warfare. Spartan boys were trained to kill from age 7. By their teens, they were thrown into combat, sometimes blindfolded, to test their instincts. If they survived, they became soldiers. If not, they weren't worth keeping. Sparta didn't just teach war, it bred it. Discipline, pain, obedience, forged into identity. The Romans took a more mechanical approach. Their engineers designed war machines that launched boulders with terrifying force. The ballista, an ancient mega crossbow, could flatten enemy walls. And their warships? Armored, fireproofed, even equipped with giant hooks to grab and board. Rome didn't just conquer, it industrialized conquest. They even figured out how to pour concrete that hardened underwater. Roman harbors still survive today because of it. They mixed volcanic ash into lime and rubble, and somehow made it stronger in seawater. We only recently learned how it worked. 2,000 years later, we're still trying to reverse engineer Rome. Meanwhile, in Egypt, their mastery of geometry went beyond monuments. They calculated the slope of pyramids with ropes and simple ratios, no rulers, no calculators. Their math wasn't just functional, it was sacred. Every angle aligned with spiritual meaning. The architecture wasn't just built for kings, it was built for eternity. Their understanding of the stars was just as powerful. Egyptians tracked planetary movements and star cycles with naked-eye precision. They used this knowledge to time harvests, ceremonies, and burials. Some of their star maps rival those made with telescopes thousands of years later. This wasn't astrology. It was survival, science, and belief, all in one. The Babylonians didn't just look at the stars, they studied them with obsessive precision. They recorded lunar cycles, tracked Jupiter's movement, and even predicted eclipses. Using nothing but clay tablets and sky watching, they built the first known star catalogs. They weren't guessing. They were calculating, centuries before modern astronomy had a name. Some of their ideas were brutal too. The Code of Hammurabi demanded an eye for an eye. Literally, if a builder's house collapsed and killed someone's son, the builder's son was executed. Ancient justice wasn't about reform. It was about fear. It was meant to be remembered. In Rome, punishment could be even stranger. Kill your parents? They'd sew you into a sack with a dog, a monkey, a rooster, and a snake, then throw you into a river. The symbolism? Total chaos. You'd die tangled with madness. Roman law wasn't always logical, but it was unforgettable. And in ancient Greece, stealing could mean branding. A hot iron pressed to your forehead, marking you for life. Justice wasn't blind. It was visible, permanent, and public. These weren't just punishments. They were warnings. And in a world without mass media, your body became the message. In China, the most feared punishment was death by 1,000 cuts. A long, slow execution meant to shame as much as kill. Each slice was symbolic, a piece of your soul lost. Executions were public, theatrical, and ritualized. Justice wasn't just carried out, it was performed. But not everything ancient people believed in was dark. They performed elaborate rituals to honor their gods, and sometimes to bargain with them. In Carthage, child sacrifices were made to appease the divine. In Mesoamerica, the Aztecs offered thousands of hearts to keep the sun alive. These weren't monsters. They were desperate people, trying to survive. The Inca performed sacrifices too, but differently. Chosen children were taken to mountaintops and left in the snow, sedated and peaceful. They believed it was an honor, that these children would live among the gods. Their bodies are still preserved, frozen in time, their faces serene, untouched by decay. In Sparta, sacrifice wasn't religious, it was personal. Weak infants were left on hillsides to die. Boys were trained to fight and starve. Pain was the point. If you couldn't endure it, you weren't meant to live. For Spartans, mercy wasn't a virtue. Strength was everything. The Vikings had their own brutal beliefs. Slaves were sometimes buried with their dead masters, killed to serve in the afterlife. In their culture, loyalty didn't end with death. It crossed into eternity. And for many, that wasn't horrifying. It was sacred. Even games could turn deadly. In Mayan ball courts, some scholars believe losing teams were sacrificed. Imagine playing for your life while crowds cheered above. The game wasn't entertainment, it was spiritual. A performance for gods who demanded more than skill. They demanded blood. But for every brutal ritual, there was also brilliance. The Greeks built a mechanical computer, the Antikythera mechanism. It tracked the sun, the moon, eclipses, and even the Olympic calendar. Found in a shipwreck, it took modern scientists decades just to figure out how it worked, and it was made over 2,000 years ago. In Baghdad, scientists built the first known batteries, clay jars filled with vinegar and metal rods. What did they use them for? Maybe electroplating jewelry. Maybe more. We still don't know. What we do know is this. Ancient people were experimenting with electricity long before Benjamin Franklin flew a kite. In China, they invented a seismograph in the year 132. It looked like a vase with dragon heads pointing in all directions. When an earthquake hit, one dragon would drop a ball into a frog's mouth, showing the quake's direction. No GPS, no sensors, just genius and gravity. In India, surgeons were performing cataract surgery centuries before Europe. They used curved needles to push clouded lenses aside and restore sight. Not all patients lived, but some saw the world again. because someone dared to try. That was ancient innovation. Risky, painful, and occasionally miraculous. These weren't isolated events. They were a pattern. Civilizations everywhere solving problems we thought were modern. From medicine to astronomy, from refrigeration to warfare, the ancient world wasn't fumbling in the dark. It was reaching, boldly, creatively, fearlessly, toward answers. So when people call the ancients primitive, remember this. They built monuments we still can't explain. Invented tools we lost for centuries. Calculated star movements more precisely than 18th century Europe. They did it with no electricity, no engines, and no machines. Just hands, stars, and ideas. Even without modern tools, they mapped the heavens with shocking precision. The ancient Egyptians, Babylonians, and Maya didn't just observe stars, they built entire calendars around them. Their temples aligned with solstices. Their cities mirrored constellations. They weren't just builders, they were cosmic architects. They combined science with belief in ways we no longer do. Astronomy was sacred. Surgery was spiritual. Their inventions weren't separate from culture. They were born from it. Today, we separate science from meaning. Back then, every discovery was part of a story, part of survival. And maybe that's what makes them unforgettable. Not just their genius, but their courage. They built without blueprints. They healed without microscopes. They risked lives to understand what we take for granted. Every pyramid, every carved bone, every fire-lit scroll is proof that they never stopped asking how. So the next time someone says the ancient world was primitive, remember the pyramid that aligns with the stars. The brain surgery in 2000 BC. The child frozen on a mountain as a sacrifice to the gods. History isn't just what happened. It's what we dared to imagine. We are not the first to be brilliant. We are not the first to be brutal. But we might be the first to forget. Because the more we learn about ancient civilizations, the more obvious it becomes. They weren't behind us. In many ways, they were far, far ahead. If that blew your mind, you're in the right place. At Drawing History, we uncover the stories textbooks skip, the genius, the horror, the humanity. Subscribe if you want more truths that make history feel alive, and more ancient facts that'll make you say, wait, that actually happened?